We are recording. Good morning. I want to welcome everyone to the Urban Forestry Stakeholder meeting. This is on Urban Forestry Master Plans 101. My name is Alyssa Knox, and I am a planner in the Environment and Development Department with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, or NCTCOG for short. This workshop is hosted by NCTCOG in conjunction with Texas Trees Foundation and Texas A&M Forest Service, and is funded by the United States Environmental Protection Agency through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Before we dive in, I want to give you some background on what NCTCOG is. We are a voluntary association of local governments. We are one of 24 regional councils in Texas. As part of our water quality management planning work, we are developing processes to support regional urban forestry efforts, and this workshop is part of those endeavors. I'm joined by my colleagues, Courtney Blevins, Regional Forester for Texas A&M Forest Service. Courtney, give a wave. And our presenter today, Rachel McGregor, who I will introduce more in depth in just a moment. And today's meeting is scheduled to last about an hour. So I want to go over some housekeeping items before we go ahead and get started. This workshop is being recorded, and we will be posting it on NCTCOG's Environment and Development YouTube channel, as well as on our water resources page. And I'm going to put that link in the chat should you need it. If you submitted an RSVP for this meeting, you will receive an email with the presentation slides and the recording when it's available. If you didn't RSVP, but you would like those materials, my email's on the screen. It's aknox@nctcog.org. You're welcome to contact me and I'll make sure you get added to the list. Just another housekeeping item as a reminder, please make sure your microphone is on mute so that we limit disruptions, and then we will unmute them for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Okay. So on today's agenda, we will be hearing from Rachel McGregor, who is the lead forester with the Texas Trees Foundation, and we'll have time for questions and answers afterwards. She will be presenting on Urban Forestry Master Plans 101. Okay, I would like to introduce Rachel McGregor. Rachel has been with the Texas Trees Foundation since May 2021, where she contributes to urban tree canopy assessments, reports and delivery, urban forest management plans, reports and delivery, urban heat island studies and delivery, urban forestry education and awareness, and the delivery of various Texas Trees Foundation programs promoting the importance of urban forestry and urban forestry best management practices. Prior to joining Texas Trees Foundation, Rachel worked for Texas A&M Forest Service for 8 years, focusing on oak will identification and management, forest stewardship plans, and the importance of forest health and human health. Rachel has a Master of Science in Plant Pathology with an emphasis in nematology from Tarleton State University, and a Bachelor of Science in Urban Forestry from Texas A&M University. And now, Rachel, you may take it away.
Okay, like Alyssa said, I am Rachel McGregor, the lead forester with the Texas Trees Foundation. This presentation, I do want it to be fairly informal, so as we go through the slides, if you have any questions as we go through them, just type them in the chat, and then again we can take questions at the end as well. So
Rachel, I think you muted yourself.
oh no.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so to get started, we'll start with the layout of why we need urban forest master plans, why are they important, and then discuss urban forest master plans, and then future opportunities that are in our area for different plans. And then next slide. So to get started, next slide, we'll start with the introduction. Imagine you are standing in the Blackland Prairie in the 1600s. Next slide. Now imagine it's present day in North Central Texas. It's the middle of the summer, it's hot, and constantly we're seeing an influx of residents to our communities, and development is happening all around us. Next slide. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were proactively managing our urban forest and green infrastructure and balancing that with the gray infrastructure? Wouldn't it be great if we had trees to walk under and play under so that our temperatures weren't so brutal? Trees are a capital asset, and it's time that we start acknowledging that and investing in them. Next slide. That's where the Texas Trees Foundation comes in. We are a research-based urban forestry nonprofit that utilizes research and data to inform decisions for people and trees. Two goals we always keep in mind is reducing urban heat and increasing the benefits of trees for better human health for all. Next slide. We value education and partnership to lead research-based implementation. So these are very important to us as an organization. Next slide. We have many programs at the Texas Trees Foundation, which you can see here, and you may hear me refer to the Texas Trees Foundation as TTF. We have many different programs, from our cool schools and workforce programs to major capital investment projects like in our Southwest Medical District project. But we will jump into our consulting services. At TTF, we offer priority mapping reports that show areas in greatest need of tree plantings, and we'll talk a little bit about those later. We'll talk a little bit about urban forest master plans. We offer inventories, ordinance reviews, urban tree canopy analysis, and more. Next slide. But before we manage what we have with plans, we need to understand what we have, what it is we actually have. What is an urban forest? Why is that important? And hopefully most of you understand what an urban forest is. If you have a couple of trees in your backyard, you have water, you have wildlife, you have all the woody vegetation in an urban setting, that is considered an urban forest. Next slide. Trees also provide many benefits. Most people are aware of a few of them, like fruits and nuts and building materials, but there are many, many more. Trees reduce urban heat, which you'll hear me harp on a lot throughout this presentation, and help with extreme temperatures. They increase mental and physical health. They increase property values and reduce heating and cooling cost. Next slide. To understand just how much your trees add value, you can use iTree tools, and this is what I've done here. iTree has it's iTree Suite and iTree tools, and one of those will help you calculate how much your tree is adding value to your property. This helps in understanding monetary values associated with trees and increases the importance of this capital asset. Next slide. Understanding urban heat and that trees not only transpire to reduced air temperature, but that they shade surfaces that absorb and reflect heat throughout the day and night, helping the urban areas cool down quicker. That's what that's what an urban heat island is. This study was done in our Pegasus Park parking lot and allowed us to show that trees can reduce surface temperatures up to almost 40 degrees Fahrenheit on mulch, which I found to be crazy. So different surfaces under trees versus surfaces that were in the sun, how much cooler they were under the shade of a tree canopy. Next slide. Another thing to consider when planting or managing urban trees is the challenges they face. The climate in urban areas are often more extreme to grow in, and pest and disease like EAB and oak wilt can be devastating impacts. Humans and development often are our biggest challenges in our urban areas. Next slide. Now that we understand what our urban forest faces and what it is, let's discuss how we can protect, manage, and grow them amidst these difficult challenges. Next slide. So what is an Urban Forest Master Plan, or a UFMP? An UFMP is a roadmap and a long-term plan for everyone. Every stakeholder that's included in this, would be involved in this plan. The plan has clear, actionable steps and timelines for implementation of goals. Next slide. Why would you need a UFMP? Well, as we previously discussed, it educates everyone on what is important. What is an urban forest? Why the urban forest matters? What are the challenges those urban forests are facing? That's why we set this slide up, this presentation up that way. It was just to show you all the things that you have to come in with in the beginning in a plan to get everybody on the same page for the future of the plan. A UFMP helps to prioritize recommendations and align all the stakeholders within the city or community. Next slide. There are 5 steps in the UFMP process, and we will start with project initiation. Next slide. Project initiation, or step 1, is the building of the project team and the steering committee, or champions of the UFMP. Research gathering also starts in this phase. Next slide. Next is the stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is the step in which you identify local community groups that may have relevant input in the plan. You will also identify local events that you can attend to gather greater community perspectives. And this is all help with alignment of the plan. Next slide. Some engagement activities include bilingual surveys, pop-up events, virtual workshops, and focus groups. And this is all in an attempt to get more feedback on the plan. Next slide. Other engagement opportunities include email blast, social media post, videos, and press releases. Like for the Fort Worth Urban Forest Master Plan, we had promotional videos done by the mayor, which actually helped increase the awareness of the Urban Forest Master Plan. Next slide. Step 3 includes the data review and analysis part of the plan. This is where a tree canopy assessment is done to see what you have, and all the city plans and inventories are reviewed for alignment with the UFMP recommendations and goals. Next slide. Step 4 is where you start developing the plan. This includes looking at what you have and discussions for what you want. This step develops recommendations for the plan and timeline and action steps it takes to get there. So you will get actionable items once the plan is completed on how to go about achieving these recommendations. Next slide. The final step, and possibly the most important, is finding out if you've included all stakeholders and created alignment, is the adoption of the plan. During this step, a presentation is given to the city for briefings, and the plan is taken before council to be voted on. So this is one of the most important steps in making sure that you've done the proper background work and gathering enough information and aligning all the recommendations when you take it to council to get voted on. We did get unanimously adopted for the Dallas Urban Master Plan. Next slide. So this doesn't mean that our role is actually over at TTF. Once the plan is adopted is when our role actually increases. We of course want to help with the implementation part of the plan as well. So all of those actionable steps we want to implement and make a reality with all of the key stakeholders involved as well. Next slide. Finally, we are going to discuss a few future opportunities in our region. Next slide. The Texas A&M Forest Service, the Texas Trees Foundation, and North Central Texas COG have a goal for a regional UFMP. North Central Texas COG has applied for an implementation grant to support a regional greening project. And they are waiting to hear back about funding award status. So we're going to talk a little bit, that was further down my slides. That was the next slide. But so for priority mapping, I just kind of wanted to go over that. As I initially said, priority mapping is a way to take demographics, health, urban heat, economic development, and air quality, combine all of those criteria, and then within a city, define which areas are most in need of planting and tree canopy growth. And then we'll get 5 of those areas. They are ground truth to make sure that the data is saying what it should say and that you can plant trees in these spaces. And then we can go in and start creating systematic planting plans where you can start planting in these areas to increase the tree canopy. Next slide. So for the Geospatial 65, this was a grant given by the Texas Forest Service, Texas A&M Forest Service. The timeline is from May 2024 to April 2025. And there are 64 planting priority cities across the state of Texas that will receive a planting priority report. It's important to note that if you aren't one of these 65 planting cities and you are interested in having a planting priority report, say that the UFMP was kind of too big for you right now, don't have enough involvement for a plan like that, but you want to get something started within your community and you would like to have actionable steps for planting trees, this might be a good idea for you. And if you want to come talk to us on the back end of this, and if your community is interested, it could be a possibility of doing a kind of a discounted rate for your plan. Next slide. So this is where I was talking about for the Texas A&M Forest Service, TTF, and NCTCOG would like to do a regional master plan. They have applied for an implementation grant to support a regional greening project, and we're waiting to hear back from them on the funding awards for that plan. And this was just exciting for all of us to talk about because at least in Texas, this has not been done before, so we could be leading the state in a regional plan. Next slide. Other opportunities that TTF could potentially help your community with include things like surveys, inventories, ordinance reviews, and helping you form an urban forestry board to help you accomplish Tree City USA status. Next slide. If we all work together regionally, we can be the change we all wish to see. Next slide. Thank you. Any questions?
Rachel, I'm wondering if you can speak a little more to the timeline of the stages. How long do you engage in public outreach? Is that like a 6-month period, a 1-month period to get feedback and input in the plan? What does that look like?
So that is a great question. I did start to include that in there, but it does change with city to city. Ultimately, you want a UFMP to be about a year-long process. You wouldn't want any more than that. So a few of those engagement things can be about 3 months of surveys and collecting data and things like that.
Great. I see a comment in the chat. Since urban forestry is a program with USDA, would communities or those interested need a farm number to create an urban forestry master plan?
I don't think that you need a farm number.
A farm, FARM number?
Yes. Yes.
I don't even know what that is.
I think if you are maybe applying for funding through the USDA, that would be a different route and they would have different requirements. But if you're just putting together, my understanding, just a UFMP in your community with other stakeholders, I don't believe a farm number would be needed. Danny, does that answer your question?
Hey, Rachel, something that always confused me in the past is, we talk about urban forest master plan and then a management plan. And I oftentimes get confused over the difference between the two. Can you kind of tell what the difference is?
Kind of from what my research is telling me, the urban forest master plans have evolved to where they do actually have actionable steps and timelines, which is more of what a management plan would have as well. So I believe the master plans have evolved into showing those already, but a management plan would then take each of those actionable steps and those timelines and break it down how you should get those done as well. It just continually breaks down your goals for you into manageable steps.
So is it important for a community to have both a master and management plan then?
It is important, but it's not necessary.
Great. I see Susan Alvarez has a question.
Yeah, no, it's just a response on that. Typically, if you're going to manage something, you have to have what you're managing quantified. And I know with respect to the city of Dallas, they did not yet have a fully complete tree inventory. So one of the steps of their master plan was to get their arms around what it was that they were going to manage. And if I remember right, developing that management plan was the next step. So
that's a great point, Susan. So like with the Fort Worth master plan, we did do a urban tree canopy analysis, and we're able, but still not a inventory. So yes, the inventory would be helpful for a management plan as well.
Rachel, what are some of the bigger obstacles some communities face in implementing one of these things? Is it staffing or something like that?
A lot of the time there is no there's previous data, but we don't get those plans, or we would want to review all the data or any plans that would align with the green infrastructure. And a lot of the time we get those in delayed. It's always being delayed. We don't get a lot of that information up front. So the city really does have to be committed to kind of doing an internal review as well. So really the city being on board, want to do more of an internal review, look at their processes, and that can hold things up. So that's one area that's been difficult. And then passing it through council, making sure that everybody's on the same page. Everybody wants this UFMP. But again, that's why I was stressing those stakeholders, those community events, when you're really getting the feedback from everybody, that's when it's very important to make sure everything's aligning correctly.
I'm over here taking notes as well. This is good information. Thank you. Okay, I see another question in the chat. Thank you. What about soil testing, and how will communities or those interested get that information? So how, I believe the question is, how do you conduct soil testing, or is that part of the master planning process, and how do communities get that information?
No, we don't do soil testing, but you can have soil testing done through the soil testing lab at Texas A&M University. There are soil maps for who is that through, Courtney? In
NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. And yeah, you don't have to do the soil testing. You know, the general soils map, you know, good idea of species that work on different soil types without actually having to do individual soil tests.
Yeah.
Like for Fort Worth, y'all got or Tarrant County, Fort Worth. The eastern side of Fort Worth is mostly low pH cross timber soil, where the western side is more high pH. And you know, some trees work on one and don't work on the other. But it's not like you had to go in and do an individual soils test. The basic information you need is already out there.
Yeah.
Rachel, you mentioned that you don't recommend the planning process taking longer than a year. Can you speak to why? Is that because it's a drain on resources, or there's becomes a lack of engagement after a year, or what's the reason behind that?
One is resources and capacity, but two is within the city council. You want them, you've taken these people along with you and kept them up to date. And so getting a vote before new council electives come in is always important as well. So
that's an excellent point. I didn't even consider that. Thank you. Are there other questions about urban forestry master planning?
Yeah, I had a question. As far as the stakeholder engagement part of the master planning process, do you hear any common concerns that usually come up from engaging those stakeholders that seems to be a reoccurrence regardless of where the planning may take place?
one is diversifying, and that's we really we did 3 rounds of this for Fort Worth because we wanted to make extra sure, because COVID had limited that for us in Dallas. So for the Fort Worth Urban Forest Master Plan, we really wanted to make sure we were hitting it diversely. So setting up surveys or pop-up events in different areas of the city, making sure we had interactive maps of people being able to show where they lived and where they were coming from within the city, and having those feedback questions that kind of give us a good range of diversity, whether it be demographics or where exactly they're living in the city itself. But I think that was our biggest, is getting enough involvement and enough feedback from the community.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Are there any more? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We will be hosting another urban forestry stakeholders meeting, and Courtney will be presenting at that one and it's titled Forestry in Your Community. And so this will be an opportunity to explore forestry efforts that maybe aren't to the level of master planning and maybe not as resource intensive, but there are still ways that we can improve our forestry canopy in our communities. So please come and join us for that one. The link is on the presentation slides to register and add that to your calendar. As I said earlier, if you submitted an RSVP for this meeting, you will receive an email with the presentation slides and the recording when it's available. If you don't hear from me within a week, that means that maybe I might not have your email. And so please make sure you reach out to me so I can get those materials to you. Please feel free to share them with whoever might be applicable in your community that couldn't join us today. And there's our staff contacts. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to listen. Thank you again to our speaker, Rachel McGregor, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.